Hi, Mark Williams here, and today I'd like to talk to you about my awakening journey, share that with you. This will likely be in several parts because there's a lot to it, and I'd like to give you a sense of what life was like before and some of the changes that have taken place since awakening and the various stages thereof. So I'll start out with my childhood briefly. I look back on my childhood, and it was really quite traumatic, I would say. A lot of bullying, a lot of anger in the home, a lot of loneliness, a lot of feeling unworthy. And that very much carried into my adult life. And I developed major depression. It was treatment resistant depression. In fact, I recall just off the top of my head, I know I saw at least 3 therapists and tried at least 5 different medications over time to try to get some kind of handle on this depression. But it was really bad, really bad. And fast forward to 2017 and discuss an event that happened that really kicked off this whole awakening journey. And as a little background to this event, I definitely was having some religious trauma at the time. There was a lot of fear of God, fear of death, and I'm sure I'll get into that at some point in more depth in another video. But I was really starting to question my spiritual beliefs. And one night, in the middle of the night, I woke up and every concept or identity of what I thought I was gone. It disappeared. The mind was blank, and there was really just a single thought, a single realization, which is all I know is I know nothing. And to be honest, it was terrifying because all of these scaffoldings of identities that I had created in life, they all were gone. They all fell apart, and I didn't know who I was. It felt like being in the abyss and just free falling, just free falling. There was absolutely nothing to hold on to. And as I said, it was really, really terrifying. And I spent the next year or so trying to reconstruct something, some kind of identity, just something to have anything familiar in my life. But when something like that happens, you cannot put the pieces back together, as it turns out. And so there was no context of awakening. I didn't know of such a thing. Um, and so my nervous system was a complete wreck from this, just tons of stress and anxiety and a sense of existential terror and dread was very much a part of that experience. And it got to a point I remember in 2018 where I just absolutely just kind of hit rock bottom. And what was interesting in hitting rock bottom there is this unquenchable motivation rose up within me. I look back on this as some kind of divine grace or something. I very much think that it's like my soul was saying, we've got to wake up here. We have got to find a better way of doing this. And that unquenchable motivation has been with me ever since. It's like my soul has been relentlessly driving for deeper and deeper awakening. And I'm very grateful for that. But at the time, I really didn't understand what was happening. So with this motivation, I was like, I am going to find some happy people and I am going to figure out how in the world to change my life to be happy. I want some joy in my life. I want life to be different. I can't keep living like this, period. That was, that was the sentiment, and nothing was going to stop me from figuring it out. And so I went down the YouTube rabbit hole, of course. Started out with some Wayne Dyer, some Eckhart Tolle, a whole bunch of others that I've probably forgotten already by now. And what I started doing actually was I started journaling. I started just writing down, like, what was I finding? What are people saying? What is my experience? And I started to get into my internal experience and look at, why am I suffering so much? What does my internal world look like? And Wayne Dyer talks a lot about that and helped me point my awareness to my inner world, my thoughts. And I started to just write down and just be honest with myself, what is actually going on inside of me. And I found that this was just an absolute toxic cesspool. My thought life, the way I was constantly, just dozens of times a day, just beating myself up, calling myself unworthy, all of these things. It was just ridiculous how negative. I was literally my own worst enemy within my head. And I simply could not continue that way once I put my awareness on it. So the first step was to clean that up. And I said to myself, well, why don't I just become my own best friend internally instead of my own worst enemy? And honestly, that was really uh, a very successful effort in a very short period of time. Surprising. It was surprising how well that actually worked. Um, I don't really consider that an awakening so much. Replacing one thought with another is kind of, um, really still not going deep enough, but it was very important. It was a very important part because it allowed me to start getting some space between all the narratives and identities that I was telling myself that I am, and getting what I would just call some witness consciousness kicking in. And that witness consciousness really just gives you space to see all the thoughts and patterns, everything that's going on inside of you, without actually getting sucked into it and identifying with it. When you do that, your awareness has a lot of power. When you put your awareness on something and you see, oh, wow, this is not necessary. And this is not actually who I really am. And then the question became, well, clearly I'm not this person that I thought I was. I'm not at all what I thought I was. And so, of course, the inquiry, you know, uh, Ramana Maharshi style, who am I? What am I? What is actually going on here? Because it is far different than I thought. I mean, I was so captive to my thoughts and narratives that I literally did not know there was another way to live. I literally was a complete prisoner of my mind. I'll go ahead and stop here for part one, and we'll pick it up with part two in the next video. Thank you so much for watching. I would appreciate your comments. Uh, any questions if you'd like me to elaborate on anything I've said so far. Thank you.